We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to a very special edition of One-on-One on We Talk News. I'm PCM Founder Jimmy Young, and I'm so happy to be reconnected and talking with the Executive Director of the NCIA, the National Cannabis Industry Association, Aaron Smith. Aaron, thank you so much for joining us. And more importantly, it's great to see you again.
Great to see you. Thank you. It's always good to be with you, Jimmy.
I appreciate that. We go back 6 years. I mean, you look back at the last 6 years, Aaron, it's been a whirlwind, not just for you, but for the entire industry, peaks and valleys. And, you know, I have this saying called Cannabis Standard Time. It's one step forward, two steps backward, one step forward. That's been the MO, hasn't it been? And yet success. 15 states since 2019 have introduced adult use. So congrats on that.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. It does, we definitely have our ups and downs, and it's not too difficult sometimes to focus on the downs, especially these days. The industry is going through a really challenging time. But when you step away and step back and look at this, at the last 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, everything has been going in a positive direction for cannabis on the policy front, and in creating business opportunities for folks across the country. So it's not happening by itself, though. It's happening because of hard work from advocates out there that have been, advocating for this in their local cities and towns, and state legislatures, and on the ballot box, and in Congress. And so it's going to continue to take that to get us to the place where we need to be, and where this is treated like any other industry in the country.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice? A fair treatment for an industry that's raising billions of dollars and driving tax money all in states that have an adult use league. I mean, the fact that you still have to deal with the stigma on a regular basis is just mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that it's taken this long, to get the stigma is not really there with the voters, the American public, so much anymore. But with the elected officials that they send to Washington, it certainly still is, and that's it's kind of a strange quirk about this country, is how difficult it is to kind of translate public opinion into policy. Now, in states, you can have you have the ballot referendum process, and you can do that quite easily in many states anyway, where you go to the ballot box and can change a law one or the other based on popular opinion. But that isn't the case when we're talking about federal policy, where you have you got to get 60 senators on board with any change, and that's almost impossible to get 60 senators on board with anything these days. And especially the way the system's set up, where you have a state like North Dakota has the same number of senators as a state like California, when North Dakota has almost nobody living there compared to California. So the representation, it's kind of mind-boggling. But I guess we need a constitutional convention to fix all that. That's not what we're here for, I know. So it's a tangent.
No, that's not correct. that alone would be crazy. But and we don't need to point the finger at the Electoral College, because it's been around for way too long. And but you're right, a constitutional convention. It'd be nice if they would rewrite the CSA at the same time, but one step at a time. Let's talk about the public comment period that's going on right now, where anyone can log on and let the DEA know what they feel about cannabis being moved off Schedule 1. And I'm actually want to just talk about it moving off Schedule 1 rather than where it might end up at Schedule 3, because there's a great unknown. But I think we both agree that it's taken way too long to actually recognize that this product, this plant medicine, actually does have medicinal benefits. And that alone, getting it off Schedule 1, is a win for the industry if it all happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this will be getting off Schedule 1 is acknowledging medical value. And so for the listeners here, that seems like a no-brainer. I'm sure, my hometown accepted that in the early 90s, and then in California, statewide in San Francisco, and then in California in 1996. So it's, we're going on 30 years since that's been accepted, but by voters and certainly by, millions of patients that rely on it. But it's a huge step forward to have the federal government acknowledging that, especially after decades and decades of prohibition.
Hey, I live to hear the President of the United States and the Vice President actually say the words, no one should be locked up for smoking weed. Granted, President Biden didn't use that word, that terminology, but Kamala's a much cooler person.
Yeah, it's great. I think Jimmy Carter said that.
1980.
If you want to go back into your history books, Jimmy Carter is the last president to say that.
And again, I think back at those times, and it's like we had so much opportunity as a society to study this plant, to not vilify it. If you can imagine what it would have been like in 2024 if in 1980 that happened. And I'm not sure it would have happened, Aaron, because, my goodness gracious, there's a lot of history in there, but it would have changed the whole dynamic of where we're at right now. And I'm of the opinion, after talking with a lot of doctors, nurses, oncologists, that there wouldn't be as much horrible disease that we have now, people dying of cancer. And you mentioned something about the legislature and how, the bipartisan politics has really retarded any movement. And as much as I don't want to say this, I'm going to say it. I don't wish this on anybody, but if a family member comes down with a horrible diagnosis, whether it's epilepsy or a cancer, or it's any of the other diseases out there that this plant has helped, that may be the only way to get them to change their minds, because they're so dug in with, if it's your idea, I don't like it, my idea or the highway. And it just, as an American, I'm very frustrated. I'm guessing you being in the.
No, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, my experience doing lobbying on this issue for many years is that is the number one reason that moves somebody is personal experience, especially back in the days before we had 70% approval and 90% approval for medical marijuana. Mm-hmm. Those Republicans, and those first few Republicans and others that came forward, they usually did have somebody, whether it was themselves or somebody in their family that benefited from the medical benefits.
And Nancy Mace actually came right out and explained why she was cannabis, and good for her. And Sha'Carri Richardson, the Olympic sprinter who's back in the news, she too explained why, which again, I give credit for sure. Let's talk about Schedule 3 for a second, because it's going to be the if and when it goes there. And from what I understand, I think the last report was 97% of the public comments have been positive to move to Schedule 3, but nobody really knows what that means. They just know that it's off Schedule 1 and it's, being recognized as a medicinal product. So I guess my question is, it's going to be the first controlled substance that is a plant. And that alone is going to cause, I don't want to say a lot of trouble, but a lot of challenges.
Well, yeah. Well, so it continues to be is a controlled substance now, but it's a controlled substance with no potential for, no recognized medical value and high potential for abuse. The current situation now is you have the federal, it's a Schedule 1 drug, which means that theoretically every dispensary that's out there selling it is violating the law and could be, raided and shut down by the federal government at any moment and put behind bars for decades for doing that. That's not happening. So the federal government has decided that they're not going to interfere with state laws, and that's been the case since the Obama era Cole memo. They're not going to interfere with state laws, at least in terms of criminal prosecutions. So, what's going to happen if and when this moves to Schedule 3, all of our industry as we know it will continue to be violating federal law, just as we are today. We'll be trafficking in a Schedule 3 drug and not a Schedule 1 drug. Penalties are slightly lower if there were criminal penalties around that, but it's still a crime. And so that's why we do need to know that this is a good step in the right direction, but it's not the end game. The end game is getting cannabis out of the Controlled Substances Act.
How about rewriting that Controlled Substances Act? What do you think of that idea? Because I haven't heard a lot of people talking about that, but I mean, we've learned quite a bit about other controlled substances that are far more dangerous than cannabis.
Yeah, I mean, well, cannabis just doesn't belong there. It's, we have products like alcohol on the shelves that are, much, much more harmful and available, yet controlled, regulated, not available to children. We have to make sure there's proper labeling. make sure that the product's tested so that it's, meets purity standards and there's good manufacturing processes. That's how we treat alcohol. That's how we need to be treating cannabis. And the burden on us is a little lower because, or should be, because cannabis is a lot safer than alcohol, certainly safer than tobacco, safer than a lot of over-the-counter drugs, and certainly safer than many prescription drugs. And so, this is, this move to Schedule 3 would be very good for the industry. But we can talk about the tax implications later too. But it's really just a step forward, and it's, the government moves very, very, very slowly. And this is also, as I see it, probably the furthest that the administration would go without Congress is to 3. And from the most restrictive to the mid-tier restrictive. So although we hope for and ask for more.
The industry wants it descheduled. And would the industry accept a federal regulatory board that could look at both the hemp product and the cannabis THC product? Is that something that could be there? Oh, I like the thumbs up thing.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened. I'm not even touching my keyboard.
Don't ask me for that.
But it's funny because I was going to say yes to that question.
Yeah. It's that artificial intelligence thing that freaks me out.
Is that what it is?
Big Brother, I don't know. Big Brother's watching and listening to all of us whenever we have our phones around us.
But yeah, no, that is exactly what the industry, that's what our organization's asking for, is removing cannabis from the Controlled Substances Act and then laying out a new regulatory path, which would include, regulating hemp-derived cannabinoids and marijuana-derived cannabinoids equally. We're pretty agnostic as to where the THC comes from. If it's THC and it's intoxicating, then it should be regulated like alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
It's a CBD or non-intoxicating product. Those cannabinoid products can be regulated more like nutraceuticals or perhaps cosmetics in some cases. And there's a regulatory lane for that already. And hemp, and this is, hemp and time for hemp and marijuana to come together and get behind that.
And recently, during this public comment period, I read in Tom Angel's Marijuana Moment that I read pretty much every day that some former DEA chiefs and former attorney generals, and they would like a special hearing on the move. Now, Aaron, they're former administrators. That means they're members of the public, just like you and me. Why would they even consider that, as opposed to, you know what, when you sign your name, you could sign your name as former DEA, you could sign your name as former AG in the public comment period. Do you expect the favoritism to extend back to those people?
Yeah, perhaps. And I wouldn't be surprised if those folks are, yes, they're former officials, but they're probably current lobbyists for prohibitionist groups. And, I can't back that up with evidence right now, but I would put my money on that. Mm-hmm. And we can look into that after this conversation, but who they are and where the money's, and who's paying them, if anyone. But that's often the case. You get former officials that end up going on to representing special interest groups. And so, it's not surprising that they would be on that side of the argument, given where they come from. But it's, a special hearing would be fine by us. We're not requesting that by any means, but if that's the process that it takes, then we'll go through that. And the evidence, the more opportunity there is to lay out the evidence on both sides, the more, the easier it is to see that it's pretty much a no-brainer that cannabis should not be in Schedule 1 and should, frankly, Schedule 3 doesn't even necessarily make a lot of sense, but it's better than Schedule 1.
And Ken, we don't know the time frame on this, if and when it does move. But as you mentioned already, government moves very slowly, and I get that.
Yeah, I mean, we're hopeful, and I'm told that maybe I'm overly optimistic on this, but I think it could happen before the November election. I think, there's an incredible amount of political pressure behind this whole move. This isn't, frankly, this could have happened 3 years ago, and there's a reason it didn't. There's probably a reason it's happening this year. And, I think there's going to be some pressure to get it done before November. And certainly, if this is something that they want to get it done before January, because if another administration came in, could upend all of this. And I don't think that's something that the Biden administration wants. Although their real intent is to make sure there's not another administration, right? So,
Right. That's right.
and I think this is going to be helpful with that.
That's right. And they have a few, they have to figure that one out. It's got to take more time for them to actually focus on that activity of a presidential election rather than, but it seems like there's always an excuse why cannabis gets put on the back burner.
Yeah, I mean, and it is a issue that we as advocates and as an industry, it's our job to push it up to the front burner, and we're frankly, we need to be doing more. There needs to be more money put into lobbying there from the industry. It's infinitesimally small compared to other industries out there that all have hundreds of lobbyists in DC right now, if not thousands of registered lobbyists working in DC on hundreds of different issues. Every issue is of top importance to them, to that interest group, as cannabis is to us. There's somebody else out there for something else. And so we're competing for a lot of attention for lawmakers, not to mention you have a war in Gaza, you have a war in Ukraine, you have, inflation and all these other issues that are happening, that are, world events that are kind of outside our control, that take time. And in Congress, they have a very, they have a pretty restricted legislative calendar. So just getting onto that calendar to get a vote on the floor of the House, it's tough. And so it requires a lot of work. The fact that it's being discussed at the levels it's being discussed at now in Congress and in the White House is a very good thing, very good sign, but we're not there yet. And it's going to take a lot of work.
Right. You mentioned 60 votes in the Senate to make anything move in that particular department of our government. Any idea how many you think you have and how many more you need to go? Or are you uncomfortable saying, well, I think it could, we have X number, but we think we're going to get, no, I mean, it's up to you.
Yeah, I think on the issue, on the issue of the Safe Banking Act as an example, that's when I think we're probably just at 60. If we could just, and we're probably, sometimes it's probably wavering because there's all sorts of negotiations happening. Well, maybe I'm going to vote for it or not. I'll vote for it if you vote for this, kind of conversations happening on the margins. So, we're probably like between 59 and 61 there on that issue. So that's great news.
Right.
And if we can actually get a vote on that, I think it would pass. On the question of broader legalization, I think we're probably over 50%, barely. But I can't promise that, but I think we're probably getting there. But we're certainly not at the 60.
Has the talk about moving it to Schedule 3 softened some of the resistance that you're getting from the other side of the aisle, if you don't mind me saying that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think there's some apathy on the other side of the aisle about it. I think you're not seeing. I mean, 10 years ago, if Obama were to be doing this 10 years ago, you would have the Speaker of the House would be taking to the well of Congress, giving a long speech about how this is going to be, corrupting our youth. And, this would be a big campaign issue. You're not seeing that on the other side. They're not thrilled about it, perhaps, but they see, this is such a modest move. It's in accordance with literally like 90+% of voters support medical.
Right.
And so, that's what this isn't even doing that, frankly. It's not even frankly supporting the current medical industry, but it's a move toward that. So yeah, I mean, we're not seeing opposition, I'd say, really in any substantial way. Now, sure, from special interest groups that are out there, prohibitionist groups, and it's even, like I think you mentioned, the public comments so far are coming in at 97%. And that includes public comments that are coming from organized, AstroTurf campaigns that are, which we have one too, but that are saying to get, asking your email subscribers to Project Sam and these other groups to submit comments in opposition to this, and those AstroTurf campaigns are still only yielding 3% versus 97%. There's some interesting comments too. I don't know if you looked in there, you can go in and just kind of click through people's comments, and I don't know what this is.
This is a riot. I'm sorry. It's obviously reading your brain and
Yeah, I've never seen
your
that.
tone, right? I love it.
It's in NCIA. We're preparing our comments now. It's a big priority for us this week, and just kind of speaking on behalf of the industry and our members.
Yeah, and again, a question about I ask a lot of our guests that are tied into the political scene and the financial scene and how it all works about which of the big three lobby groups, big pharma, big tobacco, big alcohol, who's out there that's perhaps the most, I don't want to say friendly, accepting of a cannabis legalization movement?
Well, I mean, alcohol and tobacco are already here lobbying for legalization. They have an organization that they're funding out there. They're waiting in the wings. I don't think that they necessarily would want to see the form of federal legalization that we would want to see. We want to see a more free market.
Mhm.
Pharma, I think, is indifferent. I think they support the move. I would think they're supportive of the move to Schedule 3 because of the ability to develop pharmaceutical products that wasn't there, that isn't in place now. There will be a pathway for cannabis-derived pharmaceutical products that doesn't currently exist. So that's probably good for them, but I think it's probably for them, given how big that industry is, it's kind of on the margin. It's not a big priority.
And I think people that, especially the craft growers, the little person, the small businesses, the people that have been most impacted by the failed war on drugs are fearful of big pharma getting involved.
Yeah, I think that, I understand that fear, but I think that it is overblown. Big pharma will get involved. I mean, and that's actually a good thing because there will be pharmaceutical products derived from cannabinoids. These will likely be, single molecule type drugs, which are the sorts of drugs that are approved by FDA.
Yeah.
You're not going to see big pharma selling pre-rolls or, flour or maybe not even gummies and that sort of product.
Yeah.
And you're going to see single molecule, not whole plant products, but that's good. I mean, that could help a lot of patients. That'll open up more medicine for patients. Some of it through the pharmaceutical channels. Now, the whole plant, that doesn't mean that the whole plant products that we as an industry that we're selling and we're providing to patients won't continue to have a very important role in the landscape here. And I don't think that, we don't see pharma really organizing against cannabis laws at the state level. All these years, that's not something that's really been seen in any widespread or organized way where, and I don't think that we're really it's hard for us, it's hard for them to come out and really oppose this because they're selling Oxycontin and drugs that are much more dangerous, right? So we aren't seeing that kind of opposition in the past. I don't think we're going to see it. I think they will embrace cannabis as a possible pharmaceutical product, but that's in a different lane and it's not going to overtake medical cannabis by any means.
The FDA has had 6 years to regulate CBD and they haven't done anything with it. That lack of action spurred the growth of all these products that are out there.
Yeah.
Have they learned a lesson because of that about human behavior, perhaps?
I don't think so. I mean, it's pretty confounding. And now we're seeing this lack of inaction is because on one hand created a big marketplace for these products, but it's created a situation which is good in a lot of ways, let's create a situation where there are bad actors out there, and that the good actors, which is the majority, have to compete with products that are, not what they say they are, not the dosage they say they are. You don't know where, cannabis or the hemp came from. There's a lot of issues with that, and so it's going to be important that FDA get it together. It's clearly, though, I think shows that, because we talked about the fear of big pharma, there's also a fear of the FDA coming in under Schedule 3 and stamping out every marijuana business, because they're going to be manufacturing Schedule 3 drugs without FDA approval. But I mean, we've seen what they've not done in the CBD hemp world. I can't imagine they would do that in the marijuana world.
Yeah. It's crazy that we have to distinguish the two. It's the same plant, Aaron.
Yeah.
And
it's funny to say the word marijuana again.
well, I don't like that M word, and we're not going to get into it. Why? Because I have to go into the whole diatribe about the 1930s and all that neat stuff. But I do want to ask you about the MSOs and the role that they play in the industry, because they are being targeted. The little guy hates the big guy. There's that. I love to make everything a sports analogy. Everybody loves the underdog, okay? But in this case, the MSOs are playing a very important role in the lobbying effort to move forward, right?
Yeah. I mean, for the most part, I think the MSOs and the investment that they're making in lobbying is a very good thing. I think that there will be differences between groups like ours that represent the independent operators and the top few MSOs that are making significant lobbying expenditures on what regulation looks like. But we're not even there yet. Right now, we're all working on things like safe banking. We all support rescheduling because of the impact on the tax issue.
Yep.
And all of those, those two issues are the two issues kind of in play in Congress and in the federal agencies right now. The reforms on those two issues, we agree with 100% on what that should look like, and they will help everybody: small businesses, medium, and the MSOs.
Yeah.
But I think that there is a tendency for the bigger companies to try to institute protectionist policies and regulations. We've seen that at the state level, time and time again, and we certainly expect to see that at the federal level. But again, Congress isn't talking about. Congress isn't about to pass a bill that's going to regulate marijuana just yet. One issue that I think we don't see eye to eye on is the hemp issue. We do not support prohibition of intoxicating hemp products, and it does seem that the MSO groups have been advocating for that in DC. And to me, that's a very short-sighted way to look at things, and that we need to be working together with the hemp side, and we are both. NCIA represents both sides of this, because it is one plant, like you said. But we all need to be working together as an industry to advocate for regulations that are favorable to both marijuana, hemp. Because again, we should be kind of agnostic about where the cannabinoids come from. It's all the same plant, right. So we just need to regulate it appropriately. And calling on prohibition is really a backwards approach. So that's something we don't see eye to eye on.
Yeah. And one of the latest pieces of research that has been released about Colorado and the youth use of Colorado, one of the first states to get into the legal world of cannabis. And it shows again that the use by teens and in high school goes down in legal states.
Yep.
Is that ever going to satisfy those that bring up, what about the kids? Keeping it, and I always say the kids know more about this stuff than the adults do, especially our elected officials. That being said, do we need more research like that about usage and knowledge and all that?
I mean, we always need more. But I was actually working on compiling these some of these studies today as part of our public comments, and there is, just everywhere you can look at data around youth use, there's either no indication that legalization is making a difference,
Right.
at all, or you're seeing what you describe, which is what we're seeing in many states where use is going down. In JAMA, the American Journal of Medicine, there was a study just published that showed in every single state it was down, I think 20 something, I think 26% in the year after recreational sales were made legal. If you look at the bigger, long term, it went down by I think 16% between 2011 and 2021, which was the decade that almost half the states legalized. And if you look back to data back to when I graduated high school in '96, which was the first year, that was the first year that we had medical marijuana pass in California. So that was the beginning of the movement and the dominoes falling. It's gone down dramatically. Half. It's half. Cannabis use is half what it was amongst 10th graders today as it was when I was in 10th grade.
Yeah.
And so, and I think 25% among seniors, 12th graders. So it's, this is working to keep cannabis not being cool enough, for kids to want to be getting into it. But more importantly, it's working because we're age gating it behind regulated stores.
And I also see the education about the product has improved, and it's getting out into the open, getting into the schools. But I still see a lot of pushback about access to the medicine during the school day. One of our correspondents from Michigan has a law before the Michigan legislature that's named after her son, Jaden's law. She has to go to school every day to provide the medicine for her child, take him out of school, go 1,000 feet away from the school to give him his medicine, and then drive him back to the school.
That's terrible.
In a legal state.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that should be treated like, it goes with the school nurse's office, and then the school nurse can handle that. I don't know if that's what that law proposals, but that's how I would think that policy should work. That's how it works with other drugs. We're not saying that the student can have it just sitting out open in class, but they should have access to it if they need it during the school day.
It's a regulated product. Treat it like a regulated product, and it's medicine. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't like you use the word recreational, Aaron. I got to tell you, that I think has hurt the industry because you don't use medicine recreationally. You don't use Robitussin recreationally. You can, and it's another adult 21 product that you can't get out of the pharmacy without showing an ID. But it's an adult use product. I'm big on preaching responsible use. I'm big on preaching education. And by the way, what works for you isn't going to work for me. Understanding the endocannabinoid system and how that works alone is a fascinating subject. There's so much education that's now available, and it's starting to be rolled out into our colleges. I'm going to give Max Simon and Greenflower a lot of credit here because he has built a nice little curriculum that is being adapted by quite a few colleges. And the American Nurses Association now says we need to learn more about cannabis as a training item. Will we ever be able to get a cannabis program in the schools that will replace what was there in those schools? In other words, right? I mean, that didn't work so well. Okay. Yeah. So maybe we need another educational program that will enlighten and explain how it works and the impact on the teen brain and the impact on humans and how different it is. And just go with the facts now.
Yeah, there ought to be, at least you're talking about DARE. I mean, that's like a K through 12 program, or was back in my day. And, that should be replaced with education about, again, why you shouldn't be using these products as a teen, but not to go turn your parents in if you if you smell it, which is what they did in my class. They had like an incense or something that they burned, and they let the class smell what it smelled like, and then they said, if you smell this, call 911. This was in the in the 80s,
right?
And people parents got ripped away from their or children got ripped away from their parents and put in orphanages when that happened, or foster homes because their parents went to prison, and that was just a horrible time. And so we've clearly gotten away from that, but now we're right, we need to move on to the next step and have some real education here.
I know that in Massachusetts, the health curriculum covers and looks at cannabis one day out of the school year. And on top of that, I know I read about a middle school group in New York that the kids initiated. We want to learn. 13 and 14-year-olds wanted to learn more about the product, and they initiated the educational program. And again, I go back to the kids know more about this stuff than the adults do. And I love the fact that they showed initiative. I really do. And there's a reason why Europe has less alcoholics than the United States of America does.
Right.
They introduce alcohol and wine to their children as teenagers, and they teach them responsible use of wine, beer, whatever spirits. Will we ever see that in America? What in the world could we do in this country that would cause that to happen in this country? When I was growing up, you mentioned you graduated high school. What year was that, Aaron?
96.
I'm sorry. I graduated high school in 1975 when the drinking age was 18. And I moved to college, Tufts University, the very first day on my 18th birthday, conveniently, right? I also thought that was a sign of God that he said, no, it's okay, Jimmy, you're an adult now. I don't think we're going to ever go backwards to that, which is a shame. But it still doesn't take away the importance of the educational process. And I really hope that somebody out there is creating a curriculum that can be introduced in health curriculum programs in high schools. It's time. It's really time. And there's certainly enough information, and tons of medical people will support that. And the nurses and the researchers will all support it because they're the ones that have helped you give you bullets in the gun, so to speak, to fight for this thing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and this is my personal opinion, just to be clear, not NCIA's, but, I agree that the drinking age and the cannabis age, should be 18. If you can go to war or, vote, you ought to be able to do all the other adult things. We either need to either that or it needs to increase everything 21. I don't know, but it should be consistent. That's my personal opinion. But and also that teens are going to be teens, and they're going to get into trouble. They're going to get into drugs and alcohol sometimes. And the parents, I'm not a parent, but those that I know that are my friends that are, I think, doing it right, usually say, I'd rather you use cannabis over alcohol. Here's all the reasons why. And better yet, do it here in the house and don't go out, have your friends here in the house. And that way they know that they're at home giggling in the basement or whatever, and not out on the streets getting into trouble. And that's, I have several friends that have kind of treat their teen kids that way, and it seems logical to me. And it's just, the prohibition approach, I think, especially with, teenagers who are just going to be resistant to authority no matter what. It's just part of it's ingrained in them, right? So that the approach is doesn't work. So, and I sometimes do wonder that is one of the the reasons that teen use is down in recent decades could be because we've made cannabis kind of normalized. And it's less cool than it was when it was illegal. Less cool to the rebel 16-year-old type, that wants to just be bad. And I in my day, I didn't drink, but I did plenty of cannabis and psychedelics when I was 16, 17 years old, and it may have been part of the reason, because it was illegal. So I don't know for a fact, but I think it probably plays a role in it. And of course, also the fact that, the more products are being distributed through regulated channels and less through the underground makes it harder to get.
Right.
For someone underage.
We'd like to think that. I'd like to end on a positive note and talk about the fact that the governor of Maryland, Wes Moore, pardoned 150,000 low-level cannabis crimes. Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey did the same a few months ago as well. I think the Oregon did it. The Oregon governor did it too. This is something that, again, President Biden's the one who urged his governors to do just that, and they have. Listening to one of the beneficiaries of that, I have a soundbite in our news this week. It was moving. It was great. I mean, he really felt like this is a huge day for me. I was busted at 16 for possession, and he hasn't been able to do anything that a normal citizen could do because of that record. That's a positive thing. And again, I'm going to give you credit. And a lot of the lobbyists in Washington have worked hard on explaining this, that perhaps the social justice element of this movement is very important, isn't it?
It's absolutely. I mean, it's the reason I'm here. It's the reason I'm doing this. I believe that it's going to be, business that drives this change, because that's the language they speak on Capitol Hill. Mm-hmm. But, my underlying, really what I'm passionate about is making sure that people have the freedom to make choices for themselves, to that affect only themselves and their own body, without having to worry about being put behind bars or being sanctioned in other ways that, like you said, could be life-changing. So it's very, very important, and it should be, whatever policy reforms and changes that we're advocating for, we should always be looking through that lens. And again, I guess not jumping around, but back to why I don't support the prohibition of the hemp products, because how can we advocate for prohibition, something that would put people in jail for a plant? That's just not, it's not what we're doing here. So it's very important.
And we've made a lot of progress on that. Why don't you give the NCIA a little plug and how people can find out about it and help the cause?
Yes, we'd love for everybody to go to our website, thecannabisindustry.org. On there, you can, right now, you can submit public comments if you haven't already done so by July 21st, I believe. You can submit public comments through our portal. We've got a little kind of template message if you don't have time to write your own, or you can write your own. We'd love to have that. We've already got 100 or so that have gone through since the other day that we've done, and trying to get as many as possible. You can also find out about membership on that site, get all the news that you need around the industry, and find out more about what we're doing on Capitol Hill to advance the interests of small businesses that are operating legally in the cannabis space.
There you go.
Thanks for that opportunity.
No, absolutely. Aaron Smith, Executive Director of the NCIA, thank you so much for spending so much time with me and chit-chatting about this at a level that I really enjoy, because it really helps me understand the challenges that you face on a daily basis, working for the cause in the halls of Congress, as it were, Aaron. So again, thank you for joining us on We Talk News One-on-One. And
we are Pro Cannabis Media.
And finally, tonight, we offer a new movie for you to check out during your holiday break. It's called Nectar Ball, The Story of Cannabis, and it's produced by two California veteran producers, Mark Schultz and Patricia Mooney. You can watch it for free if you go to the link nectarball.com and share your email with them during the 12 days between December 21st and January 1st. They will share the link with you for your enjoyment. And the movie features medical researchers, former professional athletes, and of course, Tommy Chong and Cheech Marin, legendary actors and comedians. Check out the trailer.
What if we're right? What if all of a sudden they discovered that there is medical use for marijuana and that it is good for you, and it's better than alcohol, and it's better than opioids, and it helps your health. What if we're right? What if they find that out?
Specific cannabinoids have medical value. These are facts.
I'm here today in hopes to assist in removing the demonized stigma of cannabis and the perception that cannabis is just about getting high. The true base of this plant has to be known.
I don't think anybody should ever go to jail for cannabis. Get some medicine, and everybody should have access to it.
This is something which, at the very, very least, is the key to alleviating suffering and extending life for millions of human beings, right? For returning some kind of balance to our society, and quite possibly of restoring our planet's natural balance as well.